Welcome, Sens Talk. Welcome, Sens Talk. My name is Brandon Plant, and I am your host. It's here, finally, ladies and gentlemen. It is here. The day we've been waiting for months is less than 24 hours away by the time you're watching this. It's finally here tomorrow night against the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. Your Ottawa Senators kick off the 2024-2025 regular season, which also kicks off the 12th season of coverage by yours truly here at Sens Talk, which is absolutely insane. I can't believe I've been doing it for over a decade, but it's my absolute pleasure to bring Sens coverage to you for every single game and more. It's my absolute pleasure, and I'll just say this. We've won some awards for it, which is still surreal to me. But I'm bringing this up because the next couple of videos are going to be a little less, like this. They're going to be more handheld and vlog-like because I'm going to be at the home opener, for example. But I bring this up now because by the time you watch the next video in the studio, let's just say the backdrop's going to look a little different. I have some fun things in store, some fun things to add. So stay on the lookout for that in the next few videos. But that's enough about me and Sens Talk and whatnot. Let's get to why you clicked on this video. The Ottawa Senators and what to expect from them this season. So in this video, I'm going to break down the initial roster for the Ottawa Senators after all the cuts from camp. We have 23 players now on the roster. So I'm going to break down the roster, the lines, or the projected lines, I should say, and each individual player on those lines, on those pairings, and in the tandem. Then we'll take a look at some key X factors and or storylines, whatever you want to call it, that will make or break the Ottawa Senators season. And then finally, after we've taken a look at the lineup, the stats, the X factors, and everything in between, I'll give my prediction on what will happen with the Ottawa Senators this season. I also put out a poll earlier today, which is Tuesday, asking you, the fans. We got around 800 votes, I believe, so a pretty good poll. And a substantial amount of you voted one way or the other on whether or not the Ottawa Senators are going to make the playoffs. I'm not going to spoil that right now, but the results might shock you, to be honest with you, especially considering how substantial the poll ultimately was. Now, before we get into the lineup, the key thing for me is this. 3 out of the 5 new additions are Stanley Cup champions. The other one, by the way, is a Vezina Trophy winner. Steve Staios absolutely cooked this summer and improved this roster and its fluidity, its depth. The Ottawa Senators were a little top-heavy last year, which cost them in depth, which we'll talk about later in this video. But what I will say right now, off my initial reaction to the roster, especially the opening night roster and the additions we brought in this, offseason, it's a much more well-rounded team. So with that, let's get right into it. To the first line, we have Brady Tkachuk at the left wing. Surprise, surprise, El Capitano. Brady Tkachuk lines in at left wing number 1. The captain is looking for another fantastic year after putting up 74 points and 37 goals last year. And by the way, that was a career high in goals for Tkachuk at 37. He just had a kid as well. He's going to have some dad power, maybe 40-plus goals in the making here for Brady Tkachuk this year, and I'm very serious about that because his line mates can absolutely help him get to that point. And in the middle, we got Jimothy Stützle, Tim Stützle. There's 1,000 nicknames for this guy. Tim Stützle last year, 70 points, 18 goals. In a down year for Tim Stützle, he put up 70 points. So I'm expecting a big bounce back for him. And then at right wing number 1, I have Drake Batherson, who had 66 points last year, 28 goals, a career high for him as well. So that first line has a great blend of physicality, of skill, and of course of goal scoring ability. Firstly, look, this line combined for 210 points last year, 83 goals total, okay? Ottawa had 250 goals total in the entire year. 83 of those came from these 3 players. These are your 3 premier players, which is why they're on your first line. They, if they don't have a good year, I don't think the Ottawa Senators are going to have a good year. Let's just leave it at that. So, look, they are key players for the Ottawa Senators, and if they're going to have any success, all 3 of these guys have to continue playing at these elite levels. So we'll start with Brady Tkachuk, 74 points last year, 37 goals, which was a career high for him. Also had a career high in shots with 357. He's a unicorn because he's also third in the National Hockey League in hits with 293 last year. He's going to lay you out, he's going to score goals, and he's going to put shots on net. This guy on an average night puts up between 5 to 8 shots, okay? I mean, Brady Tkachuk is an absolute workhorse, and there's really no one else like him in the league other than his brother, Matthew Tkachuk. So for Brady Tkachuk, all he really needs to do is keep on being Brady Tkachuk. Again, he's such a physical player, he's such a strong player, and he's such a skilled player. So the net front presence that he brings will certainly bring some goals, but he's really turned into a real dynamic goal scorer at this point. He can really score from everywhere. He's also a great playmaker as well. I mean, dishing the puck for quite a bit of those points as well. So Brady Tkachuk is a guy that can really do it all, and he's going to be a key factor in the Ottawa Senators offense, whether or not they can perform and get back into that playoff conversation. Now, Tim Stützle, now this is a really interesting one because I kind of already mentioned he had a down year, so to speak, but 70 points is not a down year by any means for many players. That's how good Tim Stützle is. And the big reason why people say he had a down year is because he did not have a lot of power play points. In fact, he only had one power play goal. We'll talk about that in the X Factors, but what I will say here is I cannot imagine Tim Stützle going so long again without scoring a power play goal, let alone only getting one for the year. That should absolutely pick up, and if that picks up, and by the way, it should, like I just said, there should be a lot more offense coming from him. I can see Stützle topping 90 to 100 points this year. That might seem overzealous. But again, with those two line mates who are coming off career years and are in the prime of their careers, essentially, they're about to hit the prime of their careers, and with a much more well-rounded team, with much more depth, less, requirements for them to be the guys to lead always, takes a bit of stress off them, which should help. And again, as well, Tim Stützle is not going to have a poor year like that in the power play realm again whatsoever. And then, of course, Drake Batherson, 66 points, 28 goals, career high in goals for Drake Batherson. He also improved a lot defensively. He had career highs in takeaways, 46, and blocks with 33. So again, you have a very strong line there that can score, that can play a strong two-way game, and can create some incredible offense. I mean, again, all three of those guys have multiple minute highlight reels of just sick goals. So that first line should absolutely dominate again this year. The second line I have at left wing 2 is David Perron, one of the new acquisitions last year, 47 points, 17 goals with the Detroit Red Wings. Josh Norris with 30 points and 15 goals last year in limited time. He was injured a lot, as you all know. And Claude Giroux, the Clodfather, with 64 points, 21 goals. So Claude Giroux, in my opinion, will be the main player driver on this line. And by the way, for the first time in his NHL career, he played 82 games last year, all right? And he also just had a kid, so just like Tkachuk, some father power probably coming as well. Should definitely help him push a bit more. But 64 points, 21 goals was a fantastic year for a Claude Giroux, who's not exactly, entering the prime of his career. He's in his late 30s, and Giroux is a first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion. It's not exactly shocking that he's put up some fantastic numbers in the later stages of his NHL career, but how much longer can that last? That's the big concern for me. So with guys like Norris and Perron, that's a good supporting cast around him, and hopefully that takes the stress off of Claude Giroux being the guy on the line. Obviously, we also need Josh Norris to stay healthy, and David Perron's also not exactly a spring chicken. He's a bit older as well, not as old as Claude Giroux, but he's certainly, in the latter half of his career at this point, still a very serviceable player. But what you desperately need for this line is Josh Norris to stay healthy. Perron and Giroux are fine players. They're going to get you points. They're going to produce. But without a solid second-line center there that can be a 30-plus goal scorer like that, if you lose a guy like that, that's going to be very difficult for guys like Giroux and Perron to recover from. Less so for Giroux. He can make it work. He's that good. But for Perron, who had almost half of his points on the power play, that's a bit of a concern for me. So, again, you got a good blend of experience and skill in this line, but the main catalyst, as we'll get into in a few minutes with the X Factors, is Josh Norris staying healthy. If he's healthy, that line could be almost as good, if not as good as that first line, which would be a huge boost, of course, for the Ottawa Senators. Perron, just to be specific, got 17 of 47 points last year on the power play. Well, only 19 of 64 points from Claude Giroux last year came on the power play. So Claude Giroux, he's just that good. He doesn't really rely on power play points. He can still drive the play himself. But again, you still want to have a guy like Josh Norris next to him to maximize that output. And for David Perron, he's more of a role player at this point. He's not like a Claude Giroux. He can't really drive that play himself. So you're going to need a couple of supporting guys like Giroux and Norris to help him keep up that point total. But Perron is a guy that should at least hit 40, 50 points in my opinion. 15, 20 goals for sure. While Norris can hit 30 plus if he stays healthy, and Giroux can certainly hit 60 points again. Now, the third line, I have Ridley Gregg at left wing 3, which might be a bit controversial. The Sens even had Gregg on the second line at points, where I have Perron, for example. Last year, including a slap shot goal, as you all know, he had 26 points, 13 goals, including that slapper, which I'm sure we'll be talking about for years and years to come. I know the players don't talk about it as much. They just had a laugh from all the players I've spoken to. That's been the case, but us Sens fans probably are never going to let that one go. At the third line center position, I have Shane Pinto, who might get second line minutes this year if Norris unfortunately gets hurt. God forbid, of course. Pinto, in a shortened season, only played 41 games due to that gambling suspension. He had 27 points, including 9 goals. And then another new acquisition is Michael Amadio, who had 27 points last year with Vegas, 14 goals. I love this line. I love this line. The Ottawa Senators, as I'm going to get to in a few minutes, have desperately needed, a true third line that can do some offense and can do some defense. Basically, you need a strong two-way line, and that's exactly what you got here in Amadio, Pinto, and Gregg. All three can score, all three can backcheck, all three can forecheck. All three are very strong at both ends of the ice. They're strong 200-foot players, and most importantly, all three can really shift throughout the lineup. Amadio at times can take, face-offs. Pinto, if he needs to be moved up. You got Gregg that can slide in there. There's some really nice flexibility this line presents, on top of the fact that they're strong two-way guys. So this is a line that, honestly, Amadio I'm very excited about. This is a Swiss Army knife type of player. I'm not comparing him to Nick Paul. They're different players, but he reminds me of Nick Paul in terms of the role he will play with the Ottawa Senators. He's a guy that could definitely chip in some goals, but absolutely will be a stellar defensive player, and that should certainly help the Ottawa Senators generate more offense and keep some pucks out of their own net as well. But again, like I kind of already mentioned, there's some good flexibility on this line. I would be shocked if none of these three players at least got some games in the top 6 at some point this year. Whether it's injuries or scoring issues that they need to, change up the lineup. All three of these guys could theoretically be in that top 6. Amadio less so, but again, he does have the skill to be there as well. So I really do love that third line. And again, Shane Pinto, he might get some second line center duties, especially if Norris is shifted to the wing, if that shoulder acts up again and they want to be precautionary with it. So that third line, all three of those guys can really move around, and that's what you love to see, especially from your depth positions. Now, speaking of the depth, let's get to the depth of the depths. It's the fourth line, as Nick Cousins is another new addition. He has 15.7 goals with the Florida Panthers last year. Look, you're not getting Nick Cousins for the goals. You're getting him for the commotion, we'll call it, that he's going to create on the ice. That's for sure. He's a pest, just like Ridley Gregg, just like Shane Pinto, just like Kachuk. I mean, this team is full of pests, and I absolutely love it. We used to be called the Pesky Sens. We should be called the Pesty Sens moving forward. The fourth line center, and for some people, a shocking move. For me, not so much, purely because, and I've been saying this for a bit of time, Travis Green and Adam Gaudette have a very lengthy history with one another. Gaudette has played a lot of his NHL career under head coach Travis Green, and he's absolutely earned a shot. He had essentially a goal every single preseason game this year. And in the AHL last year, he was dynamite. He was like a top 15 point getter, 71 points, and 44 goals. 44 goals from Adam Gaudette in one of the best professional leagues in the world. 44 goals in whatever league you're in should certainly catch your attention, on top of the fact that Gaudette has played over 200 NHL games as well. He's an experienced player with some offensive edge to his game, and I do like the fact that that fourth line presents some offensive ability as well. And then another new addition would be Noah Gregor on the right wing for position. 12.6 goals last year with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I do like this fourth line a bit. I like Cousins. I like the aggressive nature he will play with. Hopefully he's just not doing some dirty hits out there, though. I like clean hits that are big. I like the pestiness he brings. Again, we just need to clean up the type of hits he has. I don't want him headhunting or being a dirty player like that. I don't support that, obviously. These are still people. These are not just video game characters. We've got to make sure that he's not killing people out there, which he's kind of known for. So hopefully he curtails that back just a little bit. Hopefully he doesn't take away the aggression, though. But yeah, with that, with Gaudette and a little bit of offensive flair and Gregor, you have some nice blend of skill there and physicality, but Zach McEwen is the 13th forward, 3 points, 1 goal, 55 hits in 30 games last year in Ottawa. It's okay. I mean, Gregor and Cousins are fine. Gaudette is fine. It's nothing too flashy, but it's certainly an upgrade over what we've had over the last few years on the fourth line. And then you got guys in the AHL like Zach Ossipchuk and Jan Jenik, who could be called up as well. 2 solid centers who could be called up in a pinch. And a guy like Zach McEwen, who has 2 years left on his deal, is not going to get claimed on waivers. I assume he'll be sent down at some points this year. And a Jan Jenik or Ossipchuk could get the call, maybe even a Stephen Holiday or an Angus Crookshank. So there are certainly some options for Ottawa with a call-up from Belleville. But again, this is not exactly a sexy, flashy fourth line. But if you compare it to previous years, it's a massive upgrade. And look at Nick Cousins. Last year with the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, he had a career high in hits with 130 and a career high faceoff percentage at 53.1%. So let's say Gaudette struggles. Let's say Ossipchuk, Jenik, whoever's called up, struggles. You can have Nick Cousins draw in there as well. So, you can have Gaudette go to the wing, for example. You can really move this around. So, Nick Cousins does bring that flexibility to the fourth line. You're not solely relying on Gaudette. Out of your 4 depth forwards, you have a couple at least that can take some faceoffs. Noah Gregor is known for his speed. It never hurts to have speed on your fourth line, of course. And he's certainly not a bad defensive player. By no means is he a defensive star. But this is a guy that's not going to hurt you at either end of the ice. And that speed hopefully can translate to some goal opportunities with a skilled center like Gaudette down the middle there. And then as well, you have, of course, Zach McEwen, who will not score for you. But if you have a game against like the Leafs or the Habs where you got to drop him, he could be that guy that can drop him and sit out for 5 minutes. So, yeah, that's the forward core. Now let's get to the defense. And let me know, by the way, what you think about the forward core and my projected lineup down below. Now, the defensive core, this is probably not going to be a shock whatsoever. There might have been a couple of controversial moves I put in the forward core, but defensively, this is all pretty much set in stone. We'll start off with Artem Zub being paired with Jake Sanderson. Zub last year, 25 points, 5 goals, while Jake Sanderson, 38 points and 10 goals. Jake Sanderson will be the power play 1 quarterback. I think there's a breakout season coming for Jake Sanderson. I think he can eclipse 50 to 60 points. I think Jake Sanderson could even eclipse almost 15 goals this year. Jake Sanderson is such a fantastic player at all spots on the ice. Defensively, offensively, along the boards, in the neutral zone, wherever he is, he's excelling at what he does. He's so good at the little things, which makes him stand out from good players. That's how good he is. He's not just good, he's elite, because he does all the little things so smoothly, so easily, so nonchalantly, that you don't even notice it unless you really watch the game and pay attention. That's how good of a player he is. Now you have him taking over the power play 1 quarterback opportunities. You have Norris back. Stützle should definitely improve. Kachuk, Giroux, Batherson, the list goes on. We have a lot of offensive guys that are going to be able to put the puck in the back of the net. And Jake Sanderson should absolutely capitalize offensively in that regard. Well, Artem Zub was fine defensively last year. Both, in fact, averaged a Corsi for percentage, which means if it's above 50%, you averaged more often than not the puck possession while they were on the ice. They both averaged 53% Corsi for percentage, so both are very strong defensively and are by far Ottawa's best pairing going into this year. They're going to be the pairing against the top line on most nights. That's the pairing that's going to drive the offense at times as well. And that's the pairing where other teams are going to mark down to watch. Jake Sanderson, this is his season to really break out. There's been a lot of disrespect about Jake Sanderson. I'm not going to name other defensemen. There's a lot of great young defensemen in the National Hockey League, but fans around the league, for some reason, really don't seem to understand how good of a player Jake Sanderson is. While he had a fantastic year last year, this year, I really, really think is the year he's going to really turn heads and establish himself as a top 15, top 20 defenseman in the National Hockey League, if he isn't already. Now, the second pairing will have Tom Chabot, who had 30 points, 9 goals last year. He also gained some weight. He gained some muscle. He looks good. He looks beefy in a good way. So, this is a guy that has dealt with some injuries. Hopefully he can stay healthy, and hopefully that extra muscle can help him accomplish that goal. Well, Nick Jensen will be likely his primary defensive partner. Of course, just acquired this summer from the Capitals in that Jacob Chikrin trade. He had 14 points, including a goal last year. Don't let that, small offensive output make you think that Jensen doesn't have any offensive ability. This is a very, very, very good skater. He's just a defensive guy. This is a guy that's going to be an anchor defensive guy to let a guy like Tom Chabot go out there and do shabby things, and that's really all you need from your fourth defenseman. You need him to lock it down and let your offensive guy kind of go off. You don't have to be chained. You can let him go off while you stay back and cover the defensive side of things. We've seen when Chabot played with Zub, when Chabot played with DeMello, guys similar to Jensen who were anchor defensive guys, Chabot excelled. He played his best hockey. And I think this is a year where if Chabot can finally play more than 70 games for the first time since 2019, I think this is a year where Tom Chabot can really, again, emerge onto the scene as one of those top defensemen. We all know he's a very, very good defenseman. But again, he's played so many minutes. I mean, the last 3-4 years, this guy's averaged nearly 30 minutes a night. Good amount of the time he's playing more than 30 minutes a night. When you do that, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get fatigued. So hopefully this year in a bit of a diminished role, he's still going to be on the second power play. He's still going to probably get 20-25 minutes on average. Hopefully in a bit of a laid-back, lesser role with a defensive guy next to him for a change. Finally, he doesn't have to be the guy anymore. And maybe we see a big year from Tom Chabot. Who, again, 30 points is fine in under 60 games last year. But again, for Tom Chabot, if you can play those 70-plus games, 40, 50 points, that is fantastic, especially coming from your second pairing. Now, lastly, the third pairing, this is kind of going to be interesting because it's not exactly a shocking setup we have here. So firstly, we have Tyler Kleven, who's making the jump from Belleville to the National Hockey League on the third pairing. In the AHL last year, he had 21 points, 5 goals. Kleven is known for bringing the Klev bomb in terms of the shot and his hits. He's a very, very physical player. Think of Mark Mathot when you think of Tyler Kleven, for example, or Volchenkov, the K-Train. That's the style of play he's going to play. He's going to be a very physical player. He's a good puck mover as well, a pretty decent skater as well for his size. And he could definitely produce some offense. 10, 15 points maybe this year is something he can accomplish. A few goals would be great as well. Don't expect much from him offensively, but that's not really what you need from your third pairing as well. You need that third pairing to be strong defensively, especially in a penalty kill situation where likely Kleven will get some penalty kill opportunities, I would imagine. So Kleven's a guy where it's not a shoo-in. He will be playing every game on that third pairing because the seventh defenseman, which I'll talk about in a second, certainly can make a push. But Kleven's a guy who, for a long time, people have been saying should make that jump. It looks like this year he's going to make the jump. I'll be honest, I'm not concerned, but he did not have the greatest preseason. Certainly disappointed me, to be honest. Didn't really look the greatest, didn't look too strong. But that's expected when you're talking about a young defenseman making his first real debut into the National Hockey League. He's going to struggle. There's no doubt about that, and we need to be ready for that, and we need to be understanding of that. So don't expect Tyler Kleven to blow the doors off, but I think he's ready to be a serviceable third-pairing defenseman, and that physical edge to his game should definitely help him in that regard. Well, Travis Hamonic had 6 points, 2 goals last year. Hamonic played a good amount of the preseason with Jake Sanderson, but even without Jake Sanderson, Travis Hamonic actually looked pretty decent in the preseason. I know it's just the preseason. We'll see how he does in the regular season, but I have him projected to be the starting right defenseman in the third pairing. There's a reason that he's sticking around. He's a veteran guy. The guys in the locker room like him. And he's a guy that can definitely help mentor a guy like Tyler Kleven. But I am worried with the inexperience on the left side and Hamonic, who, frankly, the last couple of years has not been as good as he used to be. That certainly does concern me. This is where Jacob Bernard Docker, friend of the show, steps in with 14 points, 4 goals last year. Jacob Bernard Docker should definitely play a good amount of games this year in the National Hockey League. He is, right now, in my opinion, the seventh defenseman. But I think he steps in maybe even early on if Kleven or Hamonic struggle. Maybe Kleven sent down. Who knows? I got Debt, Amanda Paulo. There's some guys that can be called up. Donovan Sabrango, who had a pretty fantastic preseason, to be honest with you. It's also an option. So that third pairing is kind of just set because of who we have in the organization right now and the roster situations and whatnot and the contract situations. Cough, cough, Hamonic. So again, we'll see what happens with that. That's my really only main concern for the defensive side of things is that third pairing. And overall, in terms of the offense and defense, I'm pretty happy with all 4 lines and 3 pairings. Again, it's just that third pairing. You have a bit of inexperience, and you have a bit of it's a bit of a wild card there with Hamonic. You don't know what you're going to get with him this year. Hopefully, that good play from the preseason continues. But again, we'll see what happens with that. But none of that matters. None of that matters as long as Linus Ullmark does Linus Ullmark things. Of course, Ottawa acquired him this past offseason from the Boston Bruins in a blockbuster trade that sent Jonas Korpisalo over to the Boston Bruins. Last year, Linus Ullmark in 39 starts had a 22-10-7 record with a .915 save percentage and a 2.51 goals against average. The Vezina winner has been elite throughout his entire National Hockey League career, putting up a .918 save percentage and 238 starts in his career with 138 wins, 8 shutouts, and a 2.51 goals against average in his NHL career as well. Linus Ullmark is a guy that can be a game changer for the Ottawa Senators. This is a guy that, can steal games. And Ottawa, frankly, compared to last year, we'll talk about this in a few minutes, just needs a handful of games to be stolen to be, really burst right into that playoff scene. So Linus Ullmark is the main catalyst this season for the Ottawa Senators, which we'll get into in about a couple of minutes here. But I want to mention this as well. Anton Forsberg, the backup goaltender, 28 starts last year. Not the greatest, 15-12-0 with an .890 save percentage and a 3.21 goals against average. He also struggled in the preseason, so maybe for some stints we see friend of the show Matt Sogard get some starts as well. That's certainly a possibility. But as I just mentioned, let's just jump right into the main catalyst, the main X factor. It's the goaltending. There's no doubt about that. I mean, look, the Washington Capitals barely scraped their way into the playoffs last year in the second wild card spot with 91 points, okay? Look, if the Ottawa Senators last year just had a .900 save percentage, if they just had a .900 save percentage, which is below league average by 0.5, the Ottawa Senators would have had a record of 39, 31, and 12, good for 90 points. They would have missed the playoffs by 1 point. Let's take a look if Ottawa had a .905 save percentage. The projection shows the Ottawa Senators would have had a record of 44, 28, and 10, good for 98 points. That would have tied them for the first wild card spot. So what I'm trying to say is, look, obviously the Ottawa Senators had more issues than just goaltending last year, but goaltending was the main issue, and frankly, the issue as to why the Ottawa Senators were not even close to the playoff conversation last season. Linus Ullmark has put up .915 on average in his NHL career. All he needs to do is put up .905 to .910, and the Ottawa Senators are projected to be a playoff team. So right off the bat, as long as Linus Ullmark can do that and Anton Forsberg can play just a little bit better, we don't even need him to be .910, just .900. The Ottawa Senators should be in that playoff conversation. Now, of course, the Atlantic Division is really, really tough. I mean, look, Florida last year, combined save percentage, .913. Boston, .912. Toronto, a bit of a slip there, .893. But the combined save percentage of the Atlantic Division playoff teams was .906. So the Ottawa Senators, at the minimum, need a .905 team average save percentage. So it's definitely doable. Linus Ullmark, I'm not concerned. I think he can hit .905 no problem. I think he's going to go past .910 save percentage. My concern is you can't play Linus Ullmark for 70-plus games. You're going to need Forsberg to step up and play at least literally below league average. League average is 905. Just give us 900 goaltending, and Ottawa should be comfortably in that playoff conversation. So we'll see what happens with that. Again, just taking a look at the stats here. Projected, if you combine Linus Ullmark's and Anton Forsberg's stats from last year, Ottawa would have had a team save percentage of .913 with a record of 47, 25, and 10 for 104 points, which would have easily put them into the playoffs. So, yes, the Ottawa Senators are absolutely playoff contenders this year as long as their goaltending, Forsberg, can play at the very minimum. We're not even asking for a lot, just the very minimum league average goaltending. Anything more, and Ottawa should be in a very comfortable position. But there are some other factors that could come into play here. Look, obviously Ottawa needs to score goals. It's not only about keeping the puck out of the net, it's about putting the puck into the net. And the big factor for me this year is Josh Norris. Can he finally stay healthy? He's suffered multiple shoulder injuries now. He's missed so many games in his young NHL career. When he's healthy, he's easily a 30-plus goal scorer. And Ottawa needs that. They desperately need that to be competing with some of these heavy hitter teams in the Atlantic Division and in the Eastern Conference. You need your center who's making over $7+ million who could score 30+ goals to stay healthy. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that if you lose a 30+ goal scorer who's your second line center, that's going to hurt your playoff odds, no matter how good of a player Shane Pinto is. So if Josh Norris can stay healthy, that 30-plus goal boost will be absolutely massive. Speaking of goal boost, Tim Stützle, as I kind of alluded to earlier in this video, will he produce this year on the power play? I say yeah. There's no way. There is absolutely no way Tim Stützle goes so long again without scoring a power play goal and ends the year with just one power play goal. That is like mathematically nearly impossible. I don't know how many points he's going to score on the power play, but Tim Stützle absolutely will bounce back on the power play. Tim Stützle agrees. So I'm very confident in a bounce back year from Tim Stützle, which overall will dramatically help the Ottawa Senators power play, which was ranked 24th last year at an 18% efficiency. If you could just bump that up by 2 to 3%, and that's a big bump, I know, but I think it's possible. Norris coming back and Stützle playing like Timmy Stützle, that will certainly be a huge help for the Ottawa Senators. Their penalty kill is also a bit of an issue, but their power play, again, I think the penalty kill should be fine with improved goaltending and a new defensive structure. But offensively, a lot of those goals came from their top six. Look, 146 of those goals came from the top six, 57 of those goals came from the bottom six, and 47 of those goals came from the defensemen, from the blue line. So why do I bring that up, and why did I break down the 250 goals the Ottawa Senators scored last year? It's very simple. The Ottawa Senators, without their top six, were not in many games last year. If the big guys weren't scoring, they were not in the games at all. So for a team like the Ottawa Senators with such elite offensive talent, that power play should be doing much better. And if you score more goals on the power play, you're going to win more games. Obviously, you're going to be able to put up more goals, and that's always going to help your team. So again, if you take that strain off of the top six on the 5-on-5 situations, that should help translate to even more goals in that power play, especially considering the fact, again, Stützle cannot have a worse year than he did last year, and Norris, if healthy, should be able to pot in a good amount of points on the power play as well. And once again, with Jacob Chychrun gone, Ottawa, 47 goals last year from the Blue Liners, was ranked 6th in the National Hockey League for that stat. But with Jacob Chychrun gone now, you're going to need those depth guys in the bottom six to start producing. You're going to need that power play to start picking it up, because you're not potentially going to have as much offense coming from the blue line again. So that is absolutely a big factor to me. It's not only, of course, about, the goaltending and keeping the puck out of the net, as I already mentioned. Ottawa has to do a much better job at scoring more efficiently in all situations. Now, the last big factor I want to bring up is Travis Green and his system. Will the team buy in? In the preseason, they looked very good, very strong forecheck, good pressure, stealing a lot of pucks and jamming in the neutral zone. I really liked their play. They look much stronger defensively. The slot wasn't open as often, but that was preseason. So let's see if the Ottawa Senators buy into Travis Green and, the Ottawa Senators' new philosophy. So we'll see what happens with that, but that's, of course, a big factor. A new coach, hopefully that will translate to much better results, on top of the fact that, again, we brought in a Vezina winning goalie. That never hurts. Now, with that, my verdict is very simple. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I put out a poll earlier today, and overwhelmingly, almost 87% of you voted yes for the Ottawa Senators to make the playoffs this year, which is a bit shocking to me because I thought that would have been a bit more contentious. I thought it would be closer to 50-50. And look, I love the enthusiasm. I just think we need to be cautiously optimistic. It's not a slam dunk by any means. Even if Allmark plays better, even if Norris stays healthy, even if Tim Stützle goes off on the power play and the bottom six scores more offensively, it's no guarantee. The Eastern Conference is so good. The Atlantic Division is so tough. It's going to be very, very tough for the Ottawa Senators to make the playoffs. But again, all we can focus on is on how we play and how we perform and on whether or not we win the games we need to win. So knowing what I know, knowing what I've seen, I think, yes, the Ottawa Senators at the very least will be in the playoff conversation, and I do think they can sneak into a playoff spot purely because, again, with just below league average goaltending, we're not even asking for above league average, just below league average goaltending, the Ottawa Senators are a playoff team last year. So, in my opinion, let's be cautiously optimistic. But I think with the additions we brought in, the much more well-rounded roster, with a healthy Josh Norris, with a bounce-back year from Tim Stützle, and of course with a Vezina winning goaltender Linus Ullmark between the pipes, the future looks bright for the Ottawa Senators. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And with that, I'll see you all soon for tomorrow's game, for my first recap of the year as Ottawa takes on the Florida Panthers for puck drop on game number 1 of the season. Besides that, I'll see you all soon. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'll talk soon. Go Sens, go.